Welcome to day 3, where we have congruent triangles and we're solving for x. We could also be solving for another variable, like you see over here to the right. We have y in some of our equations, but the basic idea is you are solving for a variable. The other thing that you're going to know about these triangles is that they're congruent. They're either going to give you a congruent statement and tell you straight out that they're congruent, or in a problem I'll show you in just a minute, they will let you see that there's a shortcut, like an SSS or an SAS, that kind of thing. So if we do this first problem and we look and see where is our x. So here we have an x variable, 2x minus 2. And there's a little piece chopped off, but that's got to be B because this is A and C, and B is the only other letter. So if we look at this, we have AB. Those are the first two letters. We would like to know what DE is, because if we did, we could say AB equals DE. We could create an equation and solve for x. And thankfully, we do know what DE is. So what I'm going to do with this information is I'm going to take the information about the triangle. This is side AB, 2x minus 2. This is side DE, which is 6. And then we'll put that into the Desmos calculator. And we get x equals 4. So that's an extremely easy version of these types of problems. The one on the right is significantly more difficult. The one nice thing about it is that they have told you triangle ABC is congruent to triangle DEF. However, it's more difficult because they're asking us to solve for two variables. So the first thing I do is I look for those variables. So for example, if I want to think about angle D, I can see that angle D is 5x plus 2. Well, that's going to be helpful because angle D has the variable that I'm looking to solve for. So if I look at the congruent statement, angle D is congruent to angle A, and I know angle A. So much like the first problem, this is very simple. We take the information and substitute it into that little equation, setting the two pieces equal. And then we go over to the Desmos calculator. Oops, 1 sec. 5x plus 2 equals 87. And we have to zoom out just a little bit to see that answer. That answer is 17. So x is 17. Now finding y is a little more difficult. And let me show you why. It's just this particular problem, it's a little bit more difficult. So if you look at where we have the y variable, that's angle C. Angle C is congruent to angle F. So let's write that. Angle C congruent to angle F. But the problem that we have here is that we don't know angle F. But there is a way to find angle F. If we remember that angle D was the same thing as A, excuse me, that means that angle D is also going to be 87. It's a pretty bad 7. There we go. So if we add up the 42 and the 87, that gives us 129 degrees. Well, what's left over here is angle F. If we subtract that from 180, we will know what angle F is. And angle F is 51. So now we can set up our formula. 3y equals 51. Go over to the Desmos calculator. I'm going to use x because that's a little bit easier with Desmos. And the funny thing about this is that we're also getting 17 for y. Kind of a coincidence there. So we have y and we have x, and we are done. So down below, there are some practice problems, 1 and 2, and then another 1 and 2. And then if you flip to the next page, let me go to, is it this page? No, it's page 15. If you could turn to page 15, I want to show you an example where they do not tell you that the triangles are congruent. So number 11 says, solve for x and st. But they don't tell you that the two triangles are congruent. So if we look at the triangles, we can see that we have an angle, we have a side, and we have an angle. This is 90. And we have an angle and a side and an angle. This is 90. So we could call this angle side angle and say the triangles are congruent. We can't just start setting things equal to each other until we know that the triangles are congruent. Now, we don't necessarily need a congruent statement for this. And the reason that we don't is because if we look for the x, we have an x here, but if you notice, ST and WV are congruent partners. We don't know what WV is. So we can't really use that. But if you look at this, see how we know both of the hypotenuses or hypotenuse, however you want to say that. If we know both of the hypotenuse, we know that those are the longest side in each triangle. And those would be congruent partners to each other. And when I put that in the Desmos calculator, I'm just going to give you that. We're going to get x is 30. So the first thing we need to do is check off the list. But the second thing that they asked us to do is to solve for ST. Well, that's this bottom piece. And if you notice, ST is 3x, which means 3 times x. So if we take what we know, x is 30, and multiply it by 3, we get the length of ST. Okay? So there's just a few practice problems to do on page 13, 14, and 15, and then you'll be ready to move on. Thank you.